This is WSIC 105.9 FM, 100.7 FM, 1400 AM. We are live on the book, and we have one of my favorite authors of all time here, Michalowicz. I'm going to try and do him justice with an introduction. He has built 4 multi-million-dollar companies. He's sold one of them to Fortune 500. He has sold another to private equity, maintains controlling interest in others. Mike is also experienced at failing. He has failed well over 10 times and has lost his entire fortune twice. He is an intense entrepreneur and driven author. He absolutely is my definition of a successful entrepreneur and small business owner. And I know him because he has written some of the best small business books in the country. I'd like to say in the world, but I'm a small guy from Charlotte, North Carolina, so there may be somebody outside of North America. He has written books that I'm sure you have heard: Profit First, The Pumpkin Plan, Clockwork. He also is a former small business columnist for Wall Street Journal and former business makeover specialist from MSNBC. Mike is a world-renowned keynote speaker. He absolutely has a podcast that is extraordinary. You can go to his website at Michalowicz.com, and I have all of his books, at least all that I know of here. We're going to try and go through them as much as we can. Mike, my friend, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, Joe, it's a pleasure to be with you. As you do that kind introduction, I feel I'm a manic entrepreneur. The highs, the lows, the destruction.
Well, Mike, the way you write, I feel like I know you, right? So as I'm reading your books, I feel like you're my friend, although we have never met before. And for the people that have not read any of your books, and I must tell you something, I read a lot of books. People know that about me. Your books, I didn't specifically search for you as an author, but I search for topics, and your books keep coming up. And so I could tell this guy kind of gets it, right? He understands the connection and the challenges of small business people. Walk me through your background just a little bit. How did you get here?
So I've been an entrepreneur my entire adult life. After I graduated college, I couldn't get a job, not the job I wanted, at least. And it put me into the entrepreneurial endeavors. And as you shared, I grew some businesses. I was in the tech space, tech services, and so forth. I had a couple early exits. I sold one to private equity, one to a Fortune 500. In my early 30s, I'm a self-made millionaire. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a genius. My ego and arrogance. I mean, I was such. I don't even want to say the word I was. It's too profane. It's too profane. But I'm grateful to God for that, because it became the great correction for me. I started 10 companies simultaneously. I was spending money as an angel investor to start these businesses, and I lost everything just out of pure arrogance and ignorance. And the defining moment in my life was around, I was 33, 34 years old. My daughter came to me and after I lost all our money, and said, "Daddy, since you can't support our family, I'll support us." And she put a piggy bank in front of me. She was 9 years old at the time. Wow. And that was a wake-up call. I'm ashamed of that moment, but it was a reality. I didn't understand entrepreneurship. And from that day forward, I've been an author researching and trying to understand what makes small business successful.
Right. And so your statement that I couldn't get a job is something I've said for years, right? And I tell people, your story is so familiar of mine. I peaked at 30, right? And so sometimes we build businesses, we don't realize we can't do that again, right? You know what I mean?
Yes.
There's something special about the time, the economy, and those circumstances that created something that wasn't just us.
You are so spot on, Joe. I think we have the propensity to attribute our successes to ourselves exclusively. Oh, I was so smart. I forecasted what the market would do.
Right.
Listen, if we could forecast the stock market for one day, every single person would be a billionaire.
Right.
We can't. The future is extremely hard to predict. Now, listen, opportunity meets preparation is I think the definition of luck, and we have to have those couple elements in place. But we also have to appreciate there's significant variables that we can't impact, and sometimes we're going to fail. I also think that a fortitude or a stick-to-itness is necessary. If it didn't work, if it worked early on in your 30s, it doesn't mean it's never going to work again. We just got to stick with it, and one day, if we have that fortitude, I think the season will kind of align with what we're doing, and we will be successful yet again.
So you just hit on something I wanted to talk about, and let's just kind of do it because I want to go through some of your books, if you don't mind. I know some of them are years ago, but it just kind of hit home for me, and you kind of hit on it, and I'm trying to remember exactly what book it was that you said in the book, if you knew exactly what it was going to take to be successful, you probably wouldn't have done it. Now, I don't remember what book that was, but I love the statement because it really is true, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. The Monday night quarterback in the entrepreneurial space is you look back and say, oh my God, I had no clue it was going to be this hard. And what frustrated me about myself was my initial forecasting. So when I created my first business, I wrote a business plan. That's what you're supposed to do. And in there, I wrote my pessimistic vantage point of how the business would progress. I said, if I only got 10 clients on my first week, and if I only this, and I thought that was like the worst case scenario. Well, the worst case scenario was after the first week I'll never forget this, sitting on a sidewalk curb, my just sweat pouring out of me. I had been knocking on doors trying to sell computer services, and no one took me up on the offers. I was cold calling door to door. So my pessimistic, I'm going to have 10 clients at the end of the week, actually was 0 clients.
Right. And
that's when I started realizing, oh my gosh, this is going to be extraordinarily hard. I think for most businesses, it's the initial years that requires extraordinary discipline and commitment. And it's the lack of knowing how hard it's going to be that keeps this almost perverted optimism going. Right. I will tell you, that fear and that struggle does convert into confidence once you start getting traction. But if you knew how hard it was going in, I don't think, at least for me, I don't think I've ever started a business.
I so agree with that statement. So if you don't mind, let's just kind of go through some of these books. And I kind of want people to understand why you're the man, right? To me, I love your books because it's as if I'm reliving my life. I love to tell people I've bought and sold, owned and operated more small businesses than anybody you're going to meet. I know it's a big statement, and I'm sure there's people out there who've done, but it proves a point. You got to think about it, right?
Yes.
And so you're an author that seems to connect with that thought of mine, right? That, yes. I've seen that. I feel that. Oh, that's what I did wrong. So I love that. So let's talk about this book, The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur. What was the premise for writing this book?
Yeah, it was my first book. It was my sophomoric assault on the agency of literacy. Right. But what that book was about was the realization that the lack of resources is our biggest ally. So a lot of entrepreneurs, myself included, thought, I need money to start a business. Well, I'll tell you, you can start businesses with nothing. Just, you are the business. So usually it's a service orientation, but grab a mop and you're off and you have a cleaning business because you got you. The lack of knowledge about an industry is actually a massive asset. And this was kind of mind blowing, but I noticed that people who went into industries that they were very familiar with followed the prototypical approach to industry. But people who went to industry without a lack of knowledge, I started a forensic investigation business because I saw on CSI it looked kind of cool. So I was like, I'll do this. I had no clue. I broke all the rules, and my company very quickly became the defining provider in that industry. And then Fortune 500 bought us. So it's interesting. It's the lack of things that can actually service you extremely well. Lack of money causes innovation. Lack of knowledge causes you to be an industry disruptor.
So Mike, I want you to know we are recording this because I intend on sending it out to all of our people out on the tubes and out on the book. So I want to say this very clearly. Mike Michalowicz is a genius, an absolute genius, and a prophet. Now let me tell you why. Because in chapter 5, as one of your tips, you talk about networking, and instead of paying and joining local groups and traveling to networking events, you need to start your own blog and start doing more online and hybrid and virtual reality type of meeting and networking functions, which now, my friend, is all we've got right now, right? So
yeah, that was right. That's I wrote that 15 years ago.
Hey, buddy, absolutely. That's why I'm telling you, you're a prophet. I mean, you were on your way to where the future is now. For people, talk about how you saw this as the future. I believe before most people did.
Yeah, well, okay, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if I saw it before most people, but what I did see, or what I do believe about humanity, it is the human tendency, like a river, to flow to the easiest approach. If I can get faster results with less effort and better results, that's the way I'm going to go. Well, I was thinking going to the local chamber of commerce, which I loved doing myself, how to get in the car, get dressed up, not in that sequence. I dress up, drive down, network, meet, hope I meet the right person. It was usually a half-day investment of time. But I noticed when I was on Facebook, I could find the exact person that I wanted to connect with and perhaps wanted to connect with me in minutes. I was like, wow, this is such a faster flow. Now, there was some trade-offs here. I wasn't able to meet the person face-to-face, but it was able to facilitate an initial connection that would convert. And so I think that's a lesson for all approaches to business. Is it will always be human nature to find the easier, faster, better path. And if you see something that facilitates that, I think that's where we should go first.
Okay, so let's keep moving. I want to stay on this book. Just one more point. You say, know your way to success, and it is such a true statement that us small business people have a hard time saying no to. And you say no is way more important, probably a better answer than yes in small business. Talk briefly about that, because I found that to be so true and so hard to do.
Yeah, the word yes causes dilution. The word no causes concentration. And at the end of the day, we want people who are elite providers in their space. As a consumer, I imagine this. I wish this upon no one, but maybe say I have a cardiovascular event. I have a heart attack, and I go to the doctor, and I meet with the doctor, and she says, I haven't done a heart surgery before, but yeah, I'm up for that. I do all these other things. Like, how would I respond? I'm like, no. But could you imagine? I go to the doctor, the heart surgeon, and she says, oh, the only thing I do is heart surgery. I was invited to be a pediatrician. I said no to that. Someone told me to be a brain surgeon. I said no to that. I wanted to be masterful at heart surgery. I've done this process 1,000 times before. I have a 99.9% success ratio. Are you ready for me? Heck yes. When we are consuming, we want the provider who has the best expertise to serve us. And that's not true in all cases. There's some consumers who just want the cheap, quick solution and will say, yeah, I don't really care. But for a business that sees the service as mission critical or life-saving or just vital, they want to go to the expert. And the only way to be an expert is to say no to the distractions.
Okay. So let's go to another book. Okay. Yeah. I really enjoyed this book. This is one of your newer books, Fix This Next. Instead of me telling you what I think is the premise of the book, let me read you your first chapter, what I got out of it, right? You can't get out of the woods on instinct alone. And that's what I got from this book, right? The first chapter, I could have skipped the rest of it, because that's the bottom line. Stop using instinct and start using factual. Talk a little bit about, am I close on that one?
You nailed it. The common refrain, Joe, I hear from entrepreneurs, and this was my refrain for decades, was I trust my gut instinct, shoot from the hip. And I thought that's the way to run a business. There was a study that you kind of pointed to in that book in Germany that researchers studied people lost in the woods, and they found that people walk in these circuitous patterns. When they don't have a compass to navigate their way out, they walk in circles. And you've heard this, hikers getting lost in the woods and perishing, and often being found merely hundreds of yards away from the exit. And that's what happens with business owners, is we start these recurring patterns because we trust our gut and instinct. We don't have a compass. I wrote Fix This Next. I guess identified the sequence or the chain of events that businesses go through, and a way to pinpoint where you are on that chain and what you need to do next.
And one of the things I love about your writing is it's just not your opinion. These aren't your instincts in this book. You do a lot of research to provide me with information that I can trust, and that really matters.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the average book for me takes me about 5 years of research and then 1 year to codify, to write that research into something that we can read. And it's funny, I'm working on a book now. I just got the publishing contract to write a new book about employee engagement. But I spent now the last 3 years speaking with experts, people that are doing practical studies, and trying to delineate what the core elements are, the essential elements that we can deploy in our business. My goal is to take these really esoteric and brainy type of ideas and just make it really digestible, something that
simple guys like Joe can actually understand them when they read your book.
Right. I do it for Joe. I do it for Joe.
Right. Right. Okay. Let's keep moving because we don't have a lot of time. Are we okay?
Yeah.
Are we good? Are we good with what we're doing here for you? Okay.
Yeah, I love this.
Profit First. I loved this book. I got a question for you. Here I am on the chapter, Destroy Your Debt. And you say, as one of the action points, stop reoccurring payments. And I got to tell you something, Mike. In this day and age, that's really hard to do. It seems like anything I want or need is some sort of reoccurring debt that makes it hard for me to control cash flow.
If I was on the side of the fence of the seller, I'd say set up recurring payments from the side of the buyer. Like, do not do recurring payments. It's addictive. And we forget it exists. It's funny. My wife and I were talking about this yesterday. We cut the cord of cable TV, which was costing a ridiculous amount of money. And now we signed up for all these subscriptions, Netflix and HBO. I pay more since cutting the cord. Right. It's absurd. Well, and I realize we only use about maybe 10% of what's available, not even 5%. And this is true in business too. We often subscribe to all these different services, but most of them were benefiting narrowly, almost nothing. So we have to be very disciplined and say, you know what, let's get rid of this. The sense of something costing, quote unquote, merely $10 a month or $100 a month, whatever that number is, it seems much more digestible. But when we look at it for an annual cost, that's $1,000+. It becomes really tough for a small business to support that. Yeah. So here's the best thing. The best way to do this: go cold turkey, cut every recurring expense you have, see how much pain that causes your business, and where it's causing pain, reactivate those subscriptions. But you'll notice that probably half the subscriptions you have or more, you're deriving no benefit from. And when you cancel it, there's no pain. Okay. So I do want to go on to some other books, but I know you've got a program that focuses on this, where people can get involved in this. Is that correct? Do you want to talk a minute for that? Sure. We have an organization called Profit First Professionals. We have 600 plus accountants and bookkeepers and business coaches globally. We have offices in 4 other countries, and these professionals help a small business implement Profit First correctly. The analogy I use is like a trainer. If you want to exercise and go to the gym, you can read a book and that will serve you, but do you have the discipline to stay? And secondly, are you doing the exercises correctly so you don't injure yourself? A trainer is someone that's going to keep you accountable, but they're also going to tell you how to do the process correctly so you achieve the physical results you want. These people do the same thing, but it's not physical, it's fiscal. Right. And so I really encourage people to go to your website and sign up for Profit First. It really is a phenomenal program. I appreciate that, Joe. Wise move to do that. Let's go to one of your newest book that you've got. There's one thing I want to talk about. It's probably one of the second or third thing small business people ask me is about marketing. So I love the book.
A lot of details in it. Here's the one I want to talk about just for a second. And you talk about differentiating yourself, and you say mind for ideas. Talk a little bit about that, because it is so true that we really do need to sort of take a step back and talk about mining for ideas to make you different.
We were talking earlier about that kind of getting lost in the woods and walking in circles. When I go to events for different associations and groups, say it's the pizza shop organization, I'll say, what's the best marketing techniques? I want the top 100 we have. And inevitably, even if there's a group of 1,000 people, there's usually 3 or 4 ideas that circulate over and over again. Do an email blast, social media, you got to buy those Facebook ads. And those best practices of marketing that the industry uses are the worst practice, because the consumers become, it's called habituated, so used to it that we ignore it. I suspect both you guys, if you ever receive an email that starts off with, hey friend, perhaps the first time you opened it, but I'm sure you don't read anyone now, because that was very quickly became a best practice, which is then the worst practice.
Right.
What we need to do is differentiate. So idea mining is to take ideas that already exist and then put spins on them. What's the opposite? So if everyone sends out an email with black text, send it with white text, which actually is something I did. I sent out an email with white text, so it was invisible. And then I said, hey, it's the first ever invisible ink email. That was in black text. And you had to drag your mouse over it to reveal it. And people went crazy over this email. So do the opposite. Ask what someone outside your industry would do. If I own a pizza shop, how would an accountant pitch a pizza shop? And we want to start triggering ideas that get us out of the box of the common.
Mike, thank you. We don't have time. We haven't even got to my favorite book that you wrote. I absolutely love The Pumpkin Plan. I'd love to get you back again so we can talk again, Mike. Thank you so much, my friend. I really do appreciate the time that you have spent with us. Mike Michalowicz, he absolutely is the entrepreneur you need to know. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it, buddy.
Joe, thank you. Reese, thank you.
Pleasure to meet you.
Local Biz Now. We'll see you next week.